Well, the scale of this disaster is just very simply very hard to get your head around. It's much, much worse than Ash Wednesday.
Hello again. Welcome to Media Watch 2009. I'm Jonathan Holmes. From what I've seen, Australia's media have served us well over the past 3 tragic days. And that includes last night's one-hour news special on the ABC, presented largely by Melbourne newsreader Ian Henderson from the field. Despite having no autocue, his presentation was almost seamless, which is a lot more than can be said of the news he's been reading in recent weeks from the ABC's Melbourne studio.
A former High Court judge says he advised businessman Richard Pratt he'd avoid costly litigation and further bad publicity.
Hendo hasn't been the only one made to look a mug.
So before we go, here again are tonight's main stories. Questions asked after police shoot and kill a 15-year-old boy. A doctor dies, but his brother is rescued from a New Zealand mountain. And Victoria finally receives its spring rain in summer.
The ABC even mislaid the tragic story of the little girl who was thrown from the Westgate Bridge.
As Emma O'Sullivan reports, water police rescued the youngster from the Yarra River, but she died in hospital this afternoon. Apologies, we don't have that story just for the moment.
So what on earth is going on the south bank of the Yarra? New technology is what? Studio automation. A wondrous new system called Ignite. Efficiency, cost savings, progress. One person doing 4 people's jobs and all too often stuffing up.
We believe, on advice that's given to the government, there'll be sufficient power.
Tonight. Well, today was every bit as hot, but not quite as windy as expected.
It's been tough for Ian Henderson and tougher still for the few staff left in the control room. They complained bitterly to management that they're being asked to do far too much with too little training. But ABC News is playing the problems down.
In the case of new equipment and new work practices, some teething problems are to be expected.
Stand by for sore gums in your state soon. Studio automation is coming to Sydney and Brisbane within weeks, and the rest of the country later in the year. Can't wait. You may remember at the start of this year we showed you how exciting new technology being introduced to Auntie's Melbourne studios was all too often hanging newsreader Ian Henderson out to dry.
We believe, on advice that's given to the government, there'll be sufficient power.
It's all about studio automation and a whiz-bang computer system called Ignite that theoretically allows one studio director to do about 4 people's jobs. Theoretically. Just teething problems, ABC management assured us. I said then we could expect sore gums elsewhere in the country soon, and sure enough, last Wednesday night, it was Sydney's turn to come unstuck.
Good evening, Juanita Phillips with ABC News.
Right as the government cranks up its broadband cell,
Greg Jennett's political rap led the bulletin. It went smoothly enough, except for a complete lack of name supers to tell you who was who.
We are conducting an independent investigation, and people should not be smeared as part of that process.
Who was that? Haven't a clue. Then, in the middle of a story about a police raid on an illicit amphetamine lab, disaster struck.
It's a very, very dangerous procedure. It takes a long time to dismantle and these sorts of labs.
police say the drugs made here were headed across the...
The awful silence and the black screen lasted 47 seconds, an eternity in television time. And when at last life returned to the screen, who should pop up but...
Barack Obama has wound up his first overseas trip as US president with...
Yes, it was Hendo, Melbourne to the rescue. Unfortunately, after President Obama in Iraq, came a long and, to New South Wales viewers, incomprehensible report about former Victoria Police Union boss Paul Mullett. Then, happily...
Well, we're back, and I do apologise for temporarily going missing. Moving on with the bulletin now.
But the problems continued. The name supers in the next item were all over the place, and then viewers were treated to a repeat of President Obama in Iraq. So what happened? ABC News tells us that...
A fault with a switch was missed when setting up the system.
But not to worry, just a minor glitch. Apart from that, things are going swimmingly.
The Sydney Ignite came online on March 28th and has been performing well. Ignite systems are now producing ABC News Breakfast, Midday and the Melbourne, Sydney and Perth 7pm bulletins.
As for the rest of you, don't feel left out. Your turn will be coming soon.
Coming up in SBS World News Australia at 9:30, anti-government protesters in Thailand have ended their siege of government buildings in Bangkok. The Thai army has been cracking down on the protesters with at least... Are we going to get some pictures?
Not this time, Ben. Why don't you go again and we'll put that take in the bin. But instead, SBS put it to air. Welcome to Media Watch. I'm Jonathan Holmes. A couple of weeks ago, we looked at the ABC's struggles with its new computer system, Ignite. But to be scrupulously fair, as we always are, we should point out that SBS News has been accident-prone recently too. For example, this was the lead story on its 6:30 bulletin last Monday night.
Go in flame. This is for moment after explosion of a scientific.
Karen, what's happened to your voice? That went on for more than 2 interminable minutes. We did get a nice apology from newsreader Nina Merata, but then a few stories later, it happened again.
Rio Tinto's CEO knew but was the aim, hence had been the order of the day.
Another minute and a half of garble, instead of Raina Surampayat's report on Rio Tinto's fiery AGM. And that wasn't Raina's only problem last week. As well as a reporter, she's also a part-time newsreader. But they seem to have crossed to her a bit early for this news update.
Mad Men, Thursday, 8:30 on SBS.
Is looking towards the future, you know.
Raina was hunting for Barrow Island on the map.
Yeah, so I just need to say if it's north or west.
Yeah.
North? Well, I haven't got that.
Hi there, Raina, for all watching. In the end, viewers never did find out whether Raina found out where Barrow Island was.
Saved. A gripping new Australian feature starring Claudia Carvin.
Saved indeed. SBS Head of News Paul Cutler tells Media Watch.
We're in a transitional phase to a new digital playout platform, introduced 6 weeks ago. We are having issues, a higher level of on-air mistakes than we'd normally have, and that's because of the new technology.
Paul, over here at the ABC, we call them teething problems.